I'm not quite sure how to start this one because not really a funny thing, not really something I can harp on about. Let's talk about universes and where we currently stand. So, what do I mean by where we currently stand? So, a year ago, we were told that the game is too complicated. The game is too complicated to learn, and before Attack on Titan Battle for Humanity, it was a struggle for new players to learn the game, that a player's mental load was too encumbered by the way that the current rules stand, and that a player had to remember too much, and that their mental load was basically at capacity in the first few turns, that it became a detriment to them, that they were unable to process and keep up with all the information that was coming at them. So new players through the demo, new players going to locals, were unable to keep up, and that it was kind of driving players away. So the game was going to become somewhat more simplified, and we got Blitz. And Blitz has been hit or miss. If you love Blitz, if you hate Blitz, that's not what this video is about. What I'm going to be talking about today is Universus more complicated now than it was before Attack on Titan? When I joined the game, I joined just before Crimson Rampage hit, and that's kind of why Crimson Rampage is one of my favorite sets. And all we really had in the game was Breaker, Combo, EX, Flash, Powerful, Unique, Stun, and Throw. Yeah, you had Terrain, but Terrain is one of those weird ones that's kind of like a unique, but a unique plus. The way the game flowed, each one of those abilities made sense. Being able to break your opponent's, using Breaker to stop aggression, it fell in with how the game kind of played, using Stun to take your opponent off resources, using EX and Powerful because they fit into the fighting game aspect of it. And I did struggle. I got my cards March 2022, and I didn't start playing till about May because there was no demos in my area. I learned through watching. I tried to watch some events that were happening in America, couldn't keep up. So I learned through old UVS videos on YouTube that covered the basics, and it was like a couple of videos that I had took to do it, but that was the basics that got done. And it made sense. The game was very intuitive, and I picked it up quite quickly. From the start of MHA up until League of Villains, we didn't add keywords. We added more abilities and we added more play styles, but the way the game played stayed the same. League of Villains brought in Echo. Echo was a offshoot of Multiple back from the retro days, and it was kind of well received. It made sense. It was more of a fixed, more fair version of Multiple. And more importantly, it didn't change the way the game played. It just allowed you to play and attack again. So it just kind of added this repeat aspect, but didn't impact the way the game was played. Then we go down, we go into Undaunted Raid. We get a bit more Echo support. We go into Jetburn again, more Echo support, more going lines. Yu Hakusho, a very cool, very powerful set. Again, Echo, nicely played, nicely adapted. So you're talking, what, 2021 to 2024, 3 years of the game, the way the game plays, being unchanged. And before, and then also having highest numbers of players in America, the biggest events happening with hitting in the high hundreds for nationals. And then we get Girl Power, which has its own issues in terms of a set, but we get Deflect. And Deflect was added as a way to reduce the amount of damage you were getting if you could from an attack, and you didn't, because it was a hand ability, you didn't have to pay a cost, you didn't have to check for it. You just put it in there and you reduce the amount. And again, wow, chef's kiss. This is a really cool ability, underutilized, but it was a way to keep yourself alive in situations where you couldn't block. it increased the play experience. It allowed you to still have a fighting chance. If I had a low deflect card, a low block card with deflect, but it was a high attack, I have to take this damage, but I can reduce the amount of damage I'm taking. This increases the play experience. It makes it more fun. It makes it more interactive. But the way the game played, still the same. And then we get to Attack on Titan, and we start hearing about the mental load of players and how the game needs to be simplified, needs to be more streamlined. Attacks need to do what they were designed to do. And we get Blitz, which basically says at the beginning of the enhanced step, you can use all your attacks Blitz. Your opponent has very limited ways to interact with them now. At the time, there was no way to interact with them, but now you've got a few ways to interact with them. And your attacks do what they were designed to do. It was, to me, it was a cool idea. It kind of, timing wise, was a little bit weird. And then, but at the same time, we also got Shift and Ruin and backups and these enormous attacks. And it was just this flood of information that came in. And it was overwhelming for existing players, never mind new players, to get all this stuff added in. And I was like, these cool. These are Ruin and Shift to me, cool additions to the game. I even started talking about the fact that we could, when we get the Dark Hero Challenger arc, have attacks that shifted into Vestige backups or in such a way. But then they all went away, kind of thing. We had Battle for Humanity, we had Origins of Power, and then we get Critical Role Heroes of Exandria. My favorite set of 2025. I know Guilty Gear's not even out yet, but no, Heroes of Exandria, peak design for the way it was able to utilize everything. But there was no Ruin. There was no Shift. Yes, there was backups, but these mechanics kind of stayed there. And same with the Dark Hero Challenger arc. Yes, we had a character who could transform, but there was no Shift, there was no Ruin. These mechanics became locked to this IP. And in a game like Union Arena, where you can only build out of your IP, makes sense. But in a game like Universus, where you get to utilize and you get to cross all these IPs, locking it to a singular IP, especially when in Attack on Titan they introduced symbol restrictions, so we only had 6 or 12 symbols, made it a lot harder. Yes, we also got attunement. See, so much got added in Battle of Humanity. I even forgot attunement and symbol restrictions. Attunement made it a little bit easier, but if you wanted to play a good evil character, you only just got support for that in TMNT. Restricting keywords like Ruin and these shift attacks is really weird. And yes, we have a lot of Infinity shift attacks, but we're not seeing them outside these IPs. And this is where I'm going to start going and go. The game, to me, feels more complicated than it was before Attack on Titan. Before Attack on Titan, I knew all the keywords, I knew all the ways, I kind of knew how the game was going to flow, and all I really kind of had to worry about was how my opponent was going to play, how I was going to play, and what kind of decks we were playing. But now, we've had all this stuff added with Attack on Titan, then we had Frenzy and Diplomacy added in Star Trek, we had Vestiges, which have got a utility outside of Dark Hero arc. Critical Role didn't add anything but created new ways and new utilities to play, and that is what I was used to with Yu Hakusho and the My Hero era, was that instead of getting loads of new stuff, it was more just turning the game sideways and going, here's a new way to play what we already have. And a lot of stores saw momentum for that. A lot of stores saw this more simplified way to play the game because it was all self-contained. It was all a good way to play without introducing anything new. So then we move on and we get the Street Fighter and we get Drive. But the thing is, Drive didn't add anything. It more just equated a cost to these powerful abilities and was more of a shorthand for pay one momentum. Drive one was a shorthand for pay one momentum or commit one foundation. It didn't change the way the game played, such as diplomacy or ruin did. And I thought, okay, maybe we're getting back to, with Critical Role and Street Fighter, maybe we're getting back to this. We don't need to add something new all the time. We just need to change the way the game plays. And we get into TMNT. And we get schemes. Schemes are a tough one for me. We get pizza as a keyword, which is kind of weird, but it's thematic. Schemes are a bit of both. They add something new. They add something that a lot of people kind of say are unnecessary, but they add something new in a good way. Actions are one of the most complicated things in our game. Actions are one of the toughest things for new players to get their head around and to understand the timing and how actions work. So by having schemes, forcing the opponent forcing you to play these schemes as the first form, then adding the responses and enhancements and other abilities to them, can help players get their head around the schemes. I wasn't a fan of schemes when I first came across them because something new being added to the game. But then when I actually went away and processed and thought about it, schemes help people get their head around actions. But it was still kind of like just thrown out there going, here's schemes, they're on there, and it wasn't really said, they're here to help you new players. But it was still something else new. It was still something that players have to get their head around. And now we go into Guilty Gear Strive and we get tension. And tension just goes, here's a Roman cancel. Here's one free momentum, which is something you have to be aware of. And then remember that your opponent has momentum. And here's a token card that has 4 abilities, 2 response speed, 1 form, and 1 enhance, each doing different things, each designed in different ways that you now then have to process. Before Attack on Titan, going into my turn after my opponent's attack turn, all I had to worry about was, are they holding any actions, what's in their stage, and what momentum do they have? Now, yes, there are face-up momentum abilities, and that's something to take account, but most face-up momentum abilities don't interact with you, and if they do, it's still something you can play around. So I get to go cool, but now I have to go cool. What's on my opponent's stage? What are they planning? And now Roman Cancel's there, so what's the ability on the Roman Cancel I have to worry about? Cool, it just reduces the damage down. But it's weird to say the game was too complicated last year when we now have so much more in our stage than we did before. We have backups that we need that are becoming increasingly more. I need to interact with these. Nine Titans, Splinter, Sean Gilmore, Rini, they're all very powerful in their playstyles that you need to interact with. Especially now we've had Elusive added in TMNT, which means it's even harder to deal with backups. So it's a case of like, oh cool, there's a backup I need to deal with, but I can't because I need to play at least 2 attacks. So it's adding more and more to the opponent's process, and the mental load, their cognitive load, the way that they are perceiving the game becomes more difficult. Yes, getting introduced to the game thanks to Blitzes, getting that demo done is easier. Thanks to Blitzes, thanks to the way that the demos and the starter decks and everything's running, yeah, I can't fault that. The starter decks with their reduced health totals, 6 hand sizes, the way that they're more designed because their starters are not designed to be clash decks or immediately go, yeah, you can go into the games and play these. They're more designed to help you get a foundation base of how to play the game is great. But that transition from the starter deck, to locals, is so wide. It is a canyon. When I started off with my starter deck, and it prepared me for locals. Yes, I had to do a lot of research online because I didn't have a demo, but the game was a lot more intuitive. Now, to me, this game is a lot more complex. This game is a lot harder to learn. It's practically impossible to master, and to a new player, and to new players that I've spoken who have bought these, has bought TMNT, has bought Critical Role, that I've said, do you want to learn the game, or do you want? They've all kind of said the exact same thing. It's intimidating when they get out, when they look at the Critical Role cards, when they look at TMNT cards, they like them. It's the IP they want. But trying to get that interest in other IPs, knowing that they're going to be playing against them, or knowing that they're going to be playing against them, knowing that they need those cards to make their deck stronger, is a big push. It's a big ask. And when it becomes a lot more complex, when it becomes intimidating. But when you go, actually, you can only get these abilities in this IP, then it becomes so restrictive that the new players, like, it's not worth it. The game used to be designed that the IP brought them in and the gameplay got them hooked. And I don't think that's the case anymore. I think it's the case of the IP brings them in, they try the game, they have some fun with the game, but they move on when the IP moves on. Critical Role fans are not picking up Attack on Titan. I know when I was looking at, I've been following people on TikTok and on other things, and there's a guy called Ren who's been doing Critical Role. I haven't seen him open Attack on Titan, I haven't seen him open TMNT. Pip collects an Exandria Collector, however, straight into TMNT, skipped Attack on Titan though. And that's the kind of thing. But they also don't play. I've been trying to get them to play, and I think I need to get in touch with Exandria Collector because she was going to be learning to play over August, and part of what this video was initially meant to be was me chatting with these people I already talked to. We were told that the design process at the minute was to make the game more simple whilst keeping it appealing for older players. And it seems that something may have gone wrong there then, because new players aren't flocking to the game the same as they did with, say, when Critical Role was there. We saw a massive insurge of content creators and people posting and people talking about it from Critical Role, and that died out. And I haven't seen the same from TMNT, and I have been looking. There's not as much on Facebook, on Reddit, on X, on Blue Sky about the TMNT set, and I have been pushing it to the point where people are having goes at me for it because I want this game to be successful, but it is intimidating, it is complicated, and new players want something they can pick up quickly, that they can play and that they can have fun with. And in terms of keeping older players, I mean, some of the groups like airport lounges at the minute, we get so many announcements of departures, it's really hard to keep up. And some of the people that are really good at this game aren't playing it as much anymore. In the EU community alone, we've had people dropping it for things like Gundam, and we got Riftbound coming out soon. And now we've got a whole new Naruto TCG coming out. And it's a case of, in this hyper-competitive market, has Universus lost its edge because it lost what made it unique and became too complicated for people to kind of enjoy? Now, don't get me wrong, I still enjoy playing this game. I absolutely love playing this game, and I have a ball playing this game. So do not think I am going anywhere, but I just kind of wanted to voice what was going through my head, because a year ago we were told this game is too complicated, that people in the industry, that people that they were talking to, that new players at conventions and people doing demos like this game is too complicated. And like I said, demo-wise, start date-wise, could not ask for more. They've gone above and beyond making this game easier to learn. But outside of the new player experience in the demos, the entire game has become more complicated, more intimidating, and a lot harder to go from the demo and starter deck to that locals play. Star Scrambles were meant to be a way for people to do that, and it hasn't worked. People are still sweating competitive at Star Scrambles. I don't know. I'm not gonna give you an answer here. I don't have an answer. I'm not an expert in TCGs. I'm not an expert in what's going on here. I am just a person who loves this game, who's played this game, and talks to a lot of people in the community quite often, saying it's overcomplicated. Everything's getting more overcomplicated. The initial response I had to Roman Cancel was, this is overcomplicated for what it is. And it is. It's very simple in how it works to get the tension, but the ability itself adds more mental load. It makes it harder for new players. Backups are a simple concept. What they are now is overcomplicated. This is kind of how it's gone down. With every single IP having its own ability and all of it being locked, for things like Drive and Tension, I understand, but Ruin could have been in any of them. Ruin could have been in any of these sets. I'm not going to get into symbol limiting. I think symbol limiting is fine, personally. To put it simply, the IPs are bringing people in. The IPs are getting people to want to learn the game. The IPs are getting people to want to collect the cards, and are selling packs. But it's whether people are sticking around. We've had articles from UVS saying that pre-releases are on the up. More and more people are attending pre-releases. But I don't think anyone's talking about the conversion rate. How many people are actually coming to locals? Let me know, has your local seen an uptick? Are people coming into these pre-releases for Apocalypse, Hex, TMNT? Are they coming back? Are they still playing? Or are they just playing once and going? It's a hard one to say. And I mean, it's a tough one. The game is not as intuitive as it used to be. The game is a lot more complex. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'll let you personally decide. What I'm saying is, we were told this game was too complicated. We were told the way that this game was taught and the way that we learn was too complicated. Now, the way that we learn the game, the way that demos and the way that star decks work, has been dramatically improved. But the way the game plays has only got harder. The way that we keep introducing new abilities, these one-off mechanics that are in IPs, because Attack on Titan is done now. Attack on Titan is done. There's no way we're getting any more Attack on Titan because the manga has been done within the cards. So the chances of us seeing Shift or Ruin again are very low. And that's kind of where my concern is. We had Echo introduced in League of Villains, and it's come all the way through. We've had Deflect introduced in Girl Power, and it's gone all the way through. So why hasn't Ruin? Why haven't these other abilities on the cards been seen outside their IPs? We are Universus. We are the collision of IPs. We are where IPs come to fight and come. We are kind of like the singularity of IPs, where they all come and they all meet and they all fight it out, utilizing each other's abilities. So why don't we have Ruin on, say, Rocksteady? Rocksteady would have been an amazing Ruin card. He is a destructive force. He's a card pool clogger, which, is a nice control aspect to him, but he could have literally just been a destructive force, and it would have fit his character. We could have had Ruin, and it's just one of those things that IP locking mechanics adds, again, unnecessary complications. Let me know, do you think the game is more complicated than it used to be? Do you think UVS have actually achieved the goal of making the game simpler, easier to learn? And are you seeing more players? Or are you in a similar situation as me where I'm the only player in about 100 miles and the people I used to play with don't play anymore? I used to travel a couple of hours to play. They don't play anymore. There was a kind of a revival in Wales. They don't play anymore. They've moved on to other games. Everywhere around me that had this uptick last August or with Hex and stuff, it's all died out. Not from a lack of trying. The store owners, the players, they've tried to keep it going, but there's only so long a store can keep supporting a game if only 3 people show up. So let me know, is this the situation you're in? Are you in a similar situation to me where the places that support this game are getting few and far in between? Or have you seen a uptick? Have you seen a boon? Are you in a different situation to me? And you can educate me on how on your opinions and how UVS has felt for you. This has been Brett with Universus, bringing you theories, news, or more. Win, lose, or draw. I'll catch you in a bit. Bye.